I'm Nicola Wiltshire. I'm a painter based in Dundee in Scotland. I was born in Bedfordshire, which is a small county in England. I mainly use oil paints on pattern fabric with like a base drawing of charcoal, but I also make drawings using different mixed medium approaches like soft pastels and ink together, sometimes collage. Just really interested in creating a sort of dynamic surface texture and working with different materials that sort of reflect and absorb light in different ways. Yeah, that's, I guess that's what I'm into. So I was born in Bedfordshire, and that's one of the smallest counties in England, I think. There's nothing much about it apart from that it's commutable to London, so it's really well connected, but it's also really rural. There's a lot of farmland and fields surrounding each small town. I think that kind of juxtaposition between a really well connected town with London, I guess, having the theatre and the art galleries and all the gigs, you're really very much part of mainstream culture. Whenever there's like a band playing from anywhere in the world, you'll definitely be able to see it. Just get a 40-minute train away, and in that sense, you really do feel like part of the main conversation. But at the same time, you're kind of separated, and you go back to this sleepy little place. A lot of people have been there for generations of family, and yeah, it's kind of sweet and innocent and quiet and friendly. So yeah, I think my work has kind of got the best of both worlds in that it's got the immediacy that London has and the way people are so in a rush and fast paced. And I think that's kind of maybe given me the perspective or the outlook where I'm making work that is very simplified and bold and immediate. But then at the same time, I have this background of entertaining yourself and not really having much stimulation and looking to books for art as a child, copying painting. So there's like a slowness and a kind of thoughtfulness, I hope, in my paintings. So I like to have something immediate about them, but I would like them to sort of resonate for a longer time as well, and hopefully give the viewer more over time. And I guess that would be the sort of the country girl in me, maybe noticing things that are kind of mundane and overlooked, just kind of like an average small England upbringing, but maybe trying to make that magical. That's really what my work is about. My biggest influences would be just painters from Manet to the Impressionists to Gauguin and Van Gogh, Marlene Dumas I love, Matisse, Edvard Munch, Egon Schiele, loads of different painters. Really love painterly painting, if that makes sense. So I love it to look like a painting, and you can kind of see the trace of the painter. And for me, looking at painting, you can see the layers, the order they did things, the mistakes, the way they changed their mind. I love that. I love that way of communicating with the viewer. That's the sort of work that I love. At the moment, I'm at the very start of a project or a series that kind of delves into lamps as a subject. I was recently at a family member's house who was very elderly and probably wouldn't see him again. And I remember looking at the lamp that had been their family home for probably 60, 70 years. And there was a lamp in the corner of the living room, and it was really cool, kind of 70s style lamp. And I thought, I wonder how many times that's been turned off and on, and also like the idea that maybe it wouldn't be turned off and on, or maybe it would by someone else. And yeah, I guess that has got me thinking about objects and what they represent in our homes. And that, I guess, has always been a theme in my work, but usually through living things or places like landscape or plants. Originally, I was interested in that sort of universal kind of aspect of living through people and portraiture and the figure, but I've kind of slowly moved away from that and still interested in the same themes, but using different subjects to sort of portray it. I'd say the biggest challenge is all the biggest challenges are kind of the best things about being an artist. So you're working on your own and there's no rule book. And that is really freeing. But at the same time, I think it can be quite scary if things aren't going quite as well as you hope. Obviously, it's up and down all the time, and you don't know what's going to happen next, what's going to be offered your way, or who's going to commission you, who's going to buy a painting. You just kind of paint with a hope that everything's going to go the right way. And you can plan ahead to a certain extent, but you can only do your best, and then it's up to other people, whether that be galleries or buyers. It's kind of up to them whether you're successful at what you do or not. And that whole thing in itself is probably the scariest thing about being an artist, but also the most exciting. So yeah, it's kind of like traveling your own path. There's no rule book, there's no map. You're just kind of exploring, and no two artists have the same career. So yeah, that in itself is brilliant and challenging and freeing at the same time. If I was going to give advice to my younger self, I think I would have more confidence to like value what I was doing a bit more. I spent all of my 20s and maybe the first couple of years of my 30s just thinking that I would never be a painter. I see that as something that maybe the really rich people with really rich parents, or people who are well connected through family, or people who were just lucky straight out of art school, they're the ones that were successful painters. And then people like me had to kind of like juggle your passion of painting with maybe another job and trying to make other careers work. And I've tried so many different careers and just quit all of them because they just never made me feel the way painting makes me feel. And yeah, so it took me a long time to kind of have the confidence to actually focus on that fully. And I would say it's only in the last, really since I moved to Scotland, actually, when a lot of my costs went down. Living costs, it's much cheaper up here than London. So I was kind of able to make choices that were more about what I wanted to do rather than trying to kind of keep up with my monthly expenses. So yeah, the last 9 years, 8 years, I've really been focusing on painting as a career. And kind of whilst I'm doing that, I'm coming up alongside people who are 20 or, just out of art school. And I'm like, oh, I look at them and think it would be nice if I had the confidence to do that when I was their age. But also, I guess things are different now, and I'm maybe a slower developer than other people. But things like Instagram make it a lot easier than when I graduated. So, yeah, I would never change anything, but yeah, maybe that would be my advice. I'm quite a traditional painter in terms I'm quite a traditional painter in that I make 2D objects that are easy to hang. They're kind of aesthetically pleasing, I guess that's subjective, but they're not challenging. They're not kind of overly conceptual or thought provoking in talking about, the more negative sides of people experience in life. And I think I've always kind of looked at art that is more conceptual or challenging, and kind of thought maybe my work should be like that as well, but kind of become quite comfortable with the idea that my work not is not for that, and yeah, so it's quite conventional, but I do use materials in my own way. I taught myself how to paint. I'm probably using oil paints totally wrong, but really enjoying the way I use them. And I don't paint on canvas, I paint on fabric. So I'm working with a pattern or a colour made by a fabric designer before I start painting. So that's quite a fun process, and it took about 15 years to develop, and still working on that now. So yeah, not particularly unconventional in that I'm a painter, but I do probably use everything wrong. When I'm working, I'm really quite flexible, and there's a lot of different stages to my work. So the start of my work feels more like just getting the work done. I'm putting layers down. I'm trying to achieve a certain texture and also a certain like stability of a surface. So when I'm painting, I'm quite flexible with what I listen to. I'm open to listen to music or podcasts or silence even. I live on quite a busy street. My studio's at home, so sometimes there's buses and people shouting and other buskers out there playing music. So you kind of just go with whatever is happening outside. Or I'll have a CD player so I can choose an album, and that's really fun when I'm more in the later stages of painting, when I want to really get myself into a certain frame of mind. So yeah, there's that, and I've got a Bluetooth speaker so I can stream music, and then sometimes I listen to podcasts. It really depends what kind of mood I'm in, and I made a decision a long time ago when I was painting around full-time work, that you can't be fussy. I just kind of, when I want to paint, I paint, and there's no sort of getting myself into the right mood or making a ritual out of it. I've just got to go in. As soon as I'm holding the brush, that's me painting, and kind of forget about what's outside, I guess, to a certain extent. I love it when people look at my work and notice things that I also notice. So they might say, "Oh, my my granny had that fabric as her curtains," or "That reminds me of a holiday I went to when I was 5," or "That reminds me of a place in Scotland that I've been to. That reminds me of a trip to Italy," or sometimes it's what I was thinking and sometimes it's really not, and I really love that, and I do try and make work that is ambiguous enough that people can read into it in that way. I did the other art fair a few years ago, and so many people said that, "Oh, you like Patrick Caulfield," and I actually hadn't really looked at him at all. I think I've seen his paintings in the National Portrait Gallery many times growing up. I think he had two there, but that was it. And I never particularly liked them. I thought they were cool, but I never, like some other work, I never went home and started researching everything about him. So I found that really interesting that people were comparing me to him so much. Um, and yeah, that's kind of cool. And I guess it gives you another direction to look in, and maybe makes you realise, obviously you're just making work and you don't really know what it looks like until other people respond. I would love people to feel a kind of mixed sense of energy and serenity from my work. I think I do love being at home, so I create work that I guess as well because my studio's at home, but I make work that I hope sits well in a home and in a domestic kind of environment, and hopefully gives more over time. So there's an immediate effect of the painting, but as it kind of melts into your house, I want it to keep giving. And I love the idea of the painting being a portal into like the viewer's imagination. So you can stare at it and you're looking at what I've painted for a while, but then after a while you kind of drift off into your own thoughts, and maybe it's a mountain scene and you think about a holiday you were at, and then you think about a conversation with a person, and then you think about that person, and then you might kind of wander off in your thoughts, and before you know it, you're not actually looking at the painting at all, you're just kind of staring through it. And yeah, so I kind of, my aim is to create works that do that for people. So they're kind of stimulating but not jarring. And yeah, like it's a really careful balance between like calming, simple shapes that are ambiguous and kind of quite bold statement sort of colours and stimulating shapes. So yeah, that's what I would hope to create in my work. At the moment, I am starting this. At the moment, I'm starting a new series, so I'm kind of at the beginning of that journey, and I don't know where that's going to take me. So I'm hoping that I can work towards an exhibition maybe next year or the year after, but it really depends on the work. So I'm going to be doing a lot of experimentation, maybe working with different surfaces, different scale as well. Yeah, kind of playing around and hopefully having a playful start to next year. I feel really energized as well at the moment and got a lot of ideas. So I'm hoping next year will be really positive in my career. So if you want to see any of that, then I guess the best place is Instagram, and I'm at Nicola Wiltshire on Instagram. And I do post on Facebook as well. And I have a website, www.nicolawiltshire.com. Thanks for asking questions and look forward to hearing it.